one of the lessons of the last century of air power has been that air power cannot effectively, in almost any circumstance, function effectively alone. It requires many elements to make it effective. And first amongst those is a workable strategy. For example, in the recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, the coalitions had complete control of the air, give or take some risks from ground-based anti-aircraft capabilities, but essentially complete control of the air. They could apply munitions effectively wherever they wanted, but they achieved strategic failure. And that points up the necessity of having a workable strategic plan. So air power can't win unless it's within a coherent strategic framework. And those weren't available in Iraq or Afghanistan. The political elements were ignored. Secondly, and connected to that, although the idea of controlling ground from the air is very effective, and there have been dreams of doing this since the 1920s when the so-called concept of air policing started, really, unless you do have a presence on the ground, that control is only ever going to be ephemeral and temporary. That applies as much in the 1920s as it does today. It's very alluring, isn't it, to have drones patrolling so-called ungoverned space. But you're not going to govern that space unless you have some element of control on the ground itself. And finally, since the 1920s, there's always been this attraction that, yes, let's get a coherent strategic framework, and air power can win on its own. So the famous Italian theorist Dewey, and I cover his thoughts in the book in the 1920s, he said, look, we can make war less costly by applying aircraft and bombers effectively and ruthlessly at the start. And this kind of thinking developed and changed over a couple of decades and eventually produced the bombing campaigns over Germany and Japan, which were, of course, lethally damaging. In the case of Germany, over 300,000 people, mostly civilians, killed. In the case of Japan, slightly more than that. And the idea in both cases was that it would bring victory, and certainly in Europe that didn't happen. In the Far East, in the case of the Japanese, the war against the Japanese, the nuclear bombs brought the war to an end. But whether they brought the war to an end themselves or as part of a wider strategy of coercion is still a matter of debate. But one thing we can be sure of, whether it's in the 1920s, in the bombing campaigns, in Vietnam, over Kosovo, in the various Gulf Wars, or in Afghanistan today, air power cannot achieve strategic results on its own.